Lucas Reed stood in the doorway of the lakeside cafe, car keys still in his hand, every instinct screaming at him to turn around and drive home. His friends had sworn this wasn't a setup, that somewhere inside a woman named Claire was actually waiting to meet him. But Lucas had heard promises before. He'd felt the sting of pity dates and uncomfortable silences when he mentioned his son. He was a single father who smelled like sawdust and lived paycheck to paycheck. Why would anyone choose that? His phone buzzed, another encouraging text from his friend Marcus. Lucas took one breath, then another, and pushed open the door. What he didn't know was that the woman sitting by the window wasn't there out of pity. And the life he thought was too broken to share was exactly what she'd been searching for. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below. I want to see how far this story travels. And if you believe second chances are real, hit that like button and stay with me until the end. The bell above the cafe door chimed softly as Lucas stepped inside, and immediately he wanted to leave. The space was too bright, too warm, too full of couples leaning across small tables with easy smiles and intertwined fingers. He didn't belong here. He belonged in his workshop with wood shavings on his jeans and a tape measure clipped to his belt, or at home making grilled cheese for his son while helping with second-grade math homework. But Marcus had been insistent, relentless, actually. "Just one date, man," Marcus had said 3 days ago, cornering Lucas at the hardware store. "Claire's a friend of my wife's. She's smart, she's kind, and she's not looking for some perfect guy in a suit. Just show up. What's the worst that could happen?" Lucas could think of several worst-case scenarios, all of which he'd lived through before. The polite smile that didn't reach the eyes, the sudden need to check a phone when he mentioned his son, the slow retreat that came when someone realized dating a single father meant complicated schedules, shared custody conversations, and a child who would always come first. He scanned the cafe, half hoping Claire had already left. But then he saw her. She sat by the window overlooking the lake, her hands wrapped around a white ceramic mug, her gaze focused on the water outside. She wore a simple navy sweater and jeans, her dark hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. There was something calm about her, something settled that made Lucas's chest tighten with an unfamiliar feeling. Not quite hope, but close to it. She looked up as he approached, and her face broke into a genuine smile. "Lucas?" "Yeah." He cleared his throat. "Claire?" "That's me." She gestured to the seat across from her. "I'm glad you came. Marcus said you might bail." Lucas felt his face heat as he sat down. "I almost did." "Honest?" Claire's smile widened slightly. "I like that." A waitress appeared, and Lucas ordered coffee he didn't particularly want just to have something to do with his hands. When she left, silence settled between them, but it wasn't the awful, suffocating kind Lucas had been dreading. Claire didn't rush to fill it. She just watched him with patient, thoughtful eyes. "So," Lucas said finally, "Marcus tell you anything about me?" "He said you're a carpenter, that you're a good father, that you're probably the most decent guy he knows, but you don't believe it." Claire tilted her head. "Was he right?" Lucas let out a surprised laugh. "He talks too much." "Maybe. But he cares about you." The coffee arrived, and Lucas wrapped his hands around the mug the way Claire had, finding comfort in the warmth. Outside, the lake reflected the late afternoon sun in sheets of gold and amber. A few boats drifted across the water, their movements lazy and unhurried. "What about you?" Lucas asked. "What did Marcus tell you about Claire Whitmore?" "Probably that I work too much, that I'm practical to a fault, that I haven't dated anyone seriously in 3 years." She met his eyes steadily. "All true. 3 years is a long time. So is forever when you're with the wrong person." There was no bitterness in her voice, just fact. "I was married once. It didn't work. I spent a long time figuring out why." Lucas appreciated that she didn't dress it up or hide behind vague explanations. "And what did you figure out?" Claire considered the question, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. "That I was trying to be someone I wasn't, someone smaller, quieter, less ambitious. I thought that's what love required, making yourself fit into someone else's idea of who you should be." She looked up. "I was wrong." "Yeah," Lucas said quietly. "I know that feeling." They talked for an hour, then 2. The cafe filled and emptied around them, the light outside shifting from gold to pink to purple as the sun sank toward the mountains. Claire worked as a senior project manager for a tech company, managing remote teams and navigating corporate politics with the same calm competence she brought to everything else. She didn't love the work, she admitted, but she was good at it, and it gave her the freedom to live on her own terms. Lucas told her about his carpentry business, the custom furniture he built, the renovations he took on, the satisfaction of seeing raw wood transform into something beautiful and useful under his hands. He told her about the cabin he was slowly renovating, one room at a time, whenever he had spare money and energy. He didn't mention his son. Not yet. That conversation required careful timing, careful words. It was the point where interest usually died, where promising connections quietly dissolved. But then Claire asked the question he'd been dreading. "Marcus mentioned you have a son." Lucas's hands tightened around his mug. Here it was, the moment of truth. He could deflect, change the subject, keep this easy and light, or he could be honest and watch her face close off the way so many others had. He chose honesty. "Yeah, Ethan, he's 7. Lucas's voice softened automatically the way it always did when he talked about his son. "He's the best thing that ever happened to me." Claire leaned forward slightly, her expression shifting into something Lucas couldn't quite read. Not pity, not discomfort, something else entirely. "Tell me about him." The request caught Lucas so off guard that for a moment he just stared at her. Then, slowly, he started talking. About Ethan's obsession with dinosaurs and outer space. About the way he narrated everything he did in an ongoing monologue that made Lucas laugh even when he was exhausted. About the fierce concentration on his face when he was building something with his wooden blocks, tongue poking out slightly in focus. "He builds elaborate structures," Lucas said, a smile tugging at his mouth. "Towers and bridges and whole cities. Then he destroys them and builds something new. I swear he gets that from me. That need to work with his hands to make things." "That must be special," Claire said quietly, "seeing yourself in him like that." "It is. But it's scary too. Because I see all my mistakes waiting for him, all the ways I could fail him." "You won't." The certainty in her voice startled him. "You don't know that. I know you're here on a Saturday evening instead of taking the easy route and staying home. I know you talk about your son like he's the center of your universe. I know you're scared of failing him, which means you care enough to try not to." Claire held his gaze. "That's not the profile of a man who fails his kid." Something cracked open in Lucas's chest, something he'd kept carefully sealed for a very long time. He cleared his throat, looked away, focused on the lake where the last light was fading into darkness. "His mother left when he was 2, Lucas heard himself say. "Just left. Decided being a parent wasn't what she wanted after all. I haven't heard from her in 5 years. I'm sorry." "Don't be. We're better off without someone who doesn't want to be there." He meant it. The anger had faded long ago, leaving only a fierce protectiveness for his son and a bone-deep understanding that Ethan deserved people who chose him, not people who stayed out of obligation. "Still," Claire said, "that's a lot to carry alone." "Yeah, it is." They sat in silence for a moment, but it was the comfortable kind now, the kind that didn't need filling. Outside, stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. The cafe had emptied considerably, just a few scattered tables still occupied. "Can I ask you something?" Claire said. "Sure." "Why did you almost not come tonight?" Lucas huffed a quiet laugh. "Because I figured it was a setup, a pity date. Some friend of Marcus's wife who owed her a favor and got stuck meeting the single dad with sawdust in his hair." "Is that what usually happens?" "Often enough." He met her eyes. "People say they're fine with it. The kid, the complicated schedule, the fact that I'm a package deal. But then reality hits and they realize what they signed up for. Late-night phone calls from babysitters, canceled plans because Ethan's sick, always being second priority, because a 7-year-old who didn't ask for any of this is always going to come first." "As he should," Claire said simply. Lucas studied her face, looking for the doubt or hesitation he'd learned to recognize, but he found none. "You really mean that?" "Of course, he's your son. He didn't choose to have his mother leave. He needs you to be exactly who you are. Someone who puts him first. She paused. The question isn't whether you're a package deal, Lucas. The question is whether someone is brave enough and honest enough to recognize that's actually what makes you worth knowing. The words settled into Lucas like warmth into cold hands. He wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that somewhere in the world there existed a person who could see his life not as a burden to be tolerated, but as something worth choosing. "Why are you here?" he asked quietly. "Really? You could date anyone. Why show up for a blind date with a single father you've never met?" Claire was quiet for a long moment, her gaze drifting to the window. "Because I'm tired of easy," she said finally. "I'm tired of surface-level conversations and people who only want the convenient parts of another person. I'm tired of pretending that ambition and independence make me somehow less worthy of connection." She looked back at him. "Marcus said you were real, that you'd been through hard things and come out still trying to be good. That sounded worth showing up for. Even though I'm complicated, especially because you're complicated." A small smile played at her lips. "Easy is overrated. Easy doesn't push you to grow. Easy doesn't challenge you to be better." Lucas felt something shift in his chest, something that felt dangerously close to hope. "You're not what I expected." "What did you expect?" "Someone who'd be gone by now." Claire reached across the table and very gently touched his hand, just her fingers against his knuckles, warm and steady. "I'm still here." They stayed until the cafe staff started stacking chairs on tables and giving them pointed looks. As they walked outside into the cool night air, Lucas felt oddly light, as if he'd put down something heavy he'd been carrying for years. "Can I walk you to your car?" he asked. "I'd like that." They moved slowly through the parking lot, in no particular hurry. Above them, stars scattered across the sky in brilliant profusion, the Milky Way visible in a way it never was in the city. An owl called from somewhere in the trees surrounding the lake. "I have Ethan this week," Lucas said as they reached Claire's sedan, "but next Saturday he'll be at my sister's for a sleepover. I was thinking, maybe we could do this again, if you want to." Claire turned to face him fully, and in the dim light from the parking lot lamps, her expression was warm and open. "I'd like that very much." "Yeah?" "Yeah." She pulled out her phone. "Give me your number. We can figure out details." They exchanged numbers, fingers brushing as Lucas handed back her phone. The touch sent an unexpected jolt through him, not just attraction, though that was there, but something deeper. Recognition, maybe. The sense that this person understood things about him without having to be told. "Lucas," Claire said softly, "thank you for coming tonight, for being honest, for taking the risk. Thank you for seeing it as a risk worth taking." She smiled, and it transformed her whole face. "Drive safe." "You too." Lucas watched her pull out of the parking lot, her taillights disappearing around the curve of the lake road. Then he stood there for another minute, breathing in the night air, feeling the weight of possibility settle over him. His phone buzzed. A text from Claire. "Made it home. Thank you for a lovely evening. Tell Ethan his dad is pretty great." Lucas found himself grinning at his phone like a teenager. He typed back. He'd probably disagree. "I make him eat vegetables." Her response came quickly. "Monster." Still smiling, Lucas climbed into his truck and headed home. The drive took 30 minutes, winding roads climbing gradually into the foothills where his cabin sat on 5 acres of pine and aspen. By the time he pulled into his driveway, it was nearly 11. His sister's car was parked near the house. Sarah was curled up on the couch inside, reading a novel with a blanket tucked around her legs. She looked up as he came in. "How'd it go?" Lucas hung his keys on the hook by the door, still processing the evening. "Good, really good, actually." Sarah sat up straighter, her eyes widening. "Really? Lucas Reed admits a date went well. Should I call the newspaper?" "Shut up," he said, but without heat. He collapsed into the armchair across from her. "She's different. She didn't run when I mentioned Ethan. She asked about him, wanted to know more." "Smart woman." "She's incredible, Sarah. Smart and calm and honest. She didn't play games or pretend to be someone she's not. We just talked for hours." His sister studied him with the same perceptive gaze she'd had since they were kids. "You like her?" I think I do, which terrifies me. Because? Lucas scrubbed a hand over his face. Because what if this is real? What if she means what she says about being okay with my life, with Ethan? What if I let myself believe it and then what? Sarah interrupted gently. She realizes what an amazing father you are and how lucky anyone would be to be part of your life. Or she realizes it's harder than she thought. That dating a single dad means missed opportunities and complicated logistics and always coming second. Sarah set down her book and leaned forward. Lucas, listen to me. You are not a burden. Ethan is not a burden. Your life is not something people have to tolerate or endure. You're a package deal, yes. But that package includes an incredible kid, a man with integrity and skill and kindness, and a life built on real things that matter. She paused. If Claire can't see that, she's not the right person. But maybe, just maybe, she can. Lucas wanted to believe that. He wanted it so badly it hurt. Where is he? He asked, nodding toward Ethan's bedroom. Asleep for the past hour. We read 3 dinosaur books, and he told me all about how velociraptors were actually the size of chickens with feathers. Lucas smiled. He's been on a feather kick lately. He's brilliant. Sarah stood and stretched. I should get going. Early shift tomorrow. Lucas walked her to the door, pulling her into a quick hug. Thanks for watching him. Any time. You know that. She paused on the porch. And Lucas? Let yourself have this. You deserve it. After she left, Lucas checked on Ethan. His son was sprawled across his bed in the boneless way only children could manage, one arm flung over his favorite stuffed triceratops. In sleep, he looked impossibly young and vulnerable. Lucas's heart squeezed. Love you, buddy, he whispered, pressing a kiss to Ethan's forehead. He retreated to his own room, but sleep felt impossible. His mind kept replaying the evening, Claire's laugh, the way she'd leaned in when he talked about Ethan, the simple certainty in her voice when she said he wouldn't fail his son. His phone lit up with another message. Still awake? Lucas smiled and typed back, Yeah, can't sleep. Me either. Good date insomnia? Something like that. You? There was a pause, then, thinking about second chances and whether it's possible to build something real when you've learned to expect disappointment. Lucas stared at the message, his chest tight. He understood that fear intimately, the way hope could feel like a weakness, like setting yourself up for inevitable pain. I think it's possible, he typed slowly. But it takes 2 people willing to risk it. Are you willing? He thought about Ethan asleep down the hall, about the cabin he was building into a home piece by piece, about the life he'd constructed from the wreckage of his marriage, small and simple and fiercely protected. I think so, he wrote. Scared, but willing. Me too. They texted for another hour, the conversation drifting from deep to light and back again. Claire told him about her nephew's upcoming birthday party and her struggle to find a gift for a 5-year-old obsessed with trains. Lucas suggested a wooden train set he could build, then immediately worried he'd overstepped. But Claire's response was enthusiastic. Seriously? You'd do that? If you want. I like building things, and I have some scrap oak that would be perfect. That would be amazing, but only if it's not too much trouble. It's not. I'll enjoy it. They said goodnight around 1 in the morning, and Lucas finally fell asleep with his phone on the nightstand and a feeling in his chest he'd almost forgotten. The flutter of anticipation, the sense that maybe, just maybe, something good was beginning. The week that followed was busy in the best way. Lucas worked on a custom dining table for a client, the cherry wood smooth and responsive under his hands. Between jobs, he sketched out designs for the train set, letting Ethan help by handing him tools and offering commentary on which trains should be fastest. He and Claire texted throughout the days. Nothing profound, just the small moments that made up a life. A photo of her coffee cup on a Monday morning, a joke about a meeting that ran too long, a question about what kind of wood was best for outdoor furniture. Lucas found himself smiling at his phone more than he had in years. On Wednesday, Claire called during Ethan's afternoon quiet time. Hey, Lucas said, settling into his workshop chair. This is a nice surprise. I was on a break and wanted to hear your voice. There was a smile in her tone. Is that weird? No, it's nice. They talked for 20 minutes about nothing in particular. her frustration with a project timeline, his battle with a stubborn mortise and tenon joint. It was easy and comfortable, the kind of conversation that felt like slipping into well-worn jeans. "Can I ask you something?" Claire said as their call was winding down. "Always." "Saturday, would you want to do something during the day? Maybe a hike or something outdoors? I know you said Ethan's at your sister's, but if you'd rather have a quieter date, a hike sounds perfect," Lucas interrupted. "I spend so much time inside or in the workshop. Getting out would be good." "Yeah?" She sounded pleased. "There's a trail I love about 40 minutes from town. Alpine lakes, great views. It's moderately challenging, but not crazy." "I'm in. What time?" They made plans, and Lucas hung up feeling that same flutter of anticipation. He was rusty at this, at dating, at opening himself up to possibility. But with Claire, it felt less like stepping off a cliff and more like finding a path he'd been searching for. Saturday arrived with clear skies and temperatures perfect for hiking. Lucas dropped Ethan at Sarah's house, endured his son's very detailed explanation of the Lego spaceship he planned to build, and then drove to meet Claire at the trailhead. She was waiting by her car, dressed in hiking boots and athletic pants, her hair in a braid. When she saw him, her face lit up, and something in Lucas's chest expanded. "Ready?" she asked. "Ready." They set off up the trail, falling into step beside each other. The path wound through dense pine forest, the air sharp and clean with the scent of sap and earth. Sunlight filtered through the canopy in golden shafts, illuminating patches of wildflowers that still bloomed despite the advancing season. For the first mile, they talked easily. Claire told him about growing up in the Midwest, the youngest of three sisters, about moving west for college and never going back, about the slow, painful dissolution of her marriage to a man who wanted her to be someone she fundamentally wasn't. "He wasn't a bad person," she said as they navigated a rocky section of trail. "He just couldn't accept that I had ambitions beyond being his wife, that I wanted a career that challenged me, that I needed space to be myself, not just an extension of him." "That must have been lonely," Lucas said. "It was. The loneliest I've ever been, actually. Being with someone who couldn't see me." She glanced at him. "What about you? You mentioned Ethan's mother left, but you haven't talked about what that was like." Lucas was quiet for a moment, gathering his thoughts. They'd reached a clearing with a view of the valley below, and he paused, looking out over the patchwork of fields and forest. "Her name was Jennifer," he said finally. "We met in college, got married too young, had Ethan maybe before we were ready. I thought we were building a life together, but after he was born, she just checked out, stopped engaging, stopped trying. I'd come home from work and she'd hand him to me like she'd been waiting all day for me to take over." "That sounds really hard." "It was confusing more than anything. I kept trying to figure out what I was doing wrong, how I could make it easier for her. But nothing worked. And then one day I came home and she was packed, said she'd made a mistake, that she wasn't cut out for motherhood and she needed to go find herself." Lucas's voice was flat, recounting facts. "She left that night, filed for divorce 2 weeks later, and signed away all custody rights within the month." Claire touched his arm gently. "I'm so sorry." The worst part was explaining it to Ethan. He was only 2, but he knew something was wrong. He kept asking for Mama for weeks. Lucas swallowed hard. Eventually, he stopped asking. They started walking again, the trail climbing steadily now. Lucas felt the burn in his thighs, welcomed the physical exertion as a counterbalance to the emotional weight of the conversation. "Do you regret it?" Claire asked quietly. "The marriage, I mean." "No, because I have Ethan, and he's the best thing in my life. But I learned something important. I learned that I'd rather be alone than with someone who doesn't choose to be there. That taught me to protect what matters and not settle for people who see my life as an inconvenience." "That's not cynical," Claire said. "That's wise." They hiked for another hour, the conversation shifting to lighter topics. Claire pointed out birds and wildflowers, clearly knowledgeable about the ecosystem. Lucas told her about the furniture pieces he was most proud of: a rocking chair for his sister when her first child was born, a hope chest he'd built for a client's daughter. When they reached the Alpine Lake, they stopped for water and snacks. The lake was impossibly blue, reflecting the sky and surrounding peaks like a mirror. A few other hikers dotted the shoreline, but the place was largely quiet and peaceful. Thank you for bringing me here, Lucas said. It's beautiful. I thought you might like it. Claire sat on a flat rock and Lucas joined her. Their shoulders brushed and neither of them moved away. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the light play across the water. A hawk circled overhead, riding thermals with barely a wing beat. Can I tell you something? Claire said after a while. Of course. I'm scared. She turned to look at him, her expression open and vulnerable. I'm scared this is going to be real and complicated and worth it. I'm scared I'm going to care about you and about Ethan. I'm scared of getting hurt. But I'm more scared of running away from something that could be important just because it's not easy. Lucas reached over and took her hand, their fingers interlacing naturally. I'm scared too, terrified actually. But you were right last week. Easy is overrated, and you're worth the risk. So are you. They sat like that for a long time, hands linked, looking out over the lake. And Lucas thought that maybe, just maybe, his life was about to change in all the ways that mattered. The descent from the alpine lake took longer than the climb up, partly because the trail was steeper on the way down, but mostly because neither Lucas nor Claire seemed in any hurry to end the day. They stopped frequently to examine a particularly interesting rock formation, to watch a deer cross the path ahead of them, to simply stand in a patch of sunlight and talk. By the time they reached the trailhead, the sun was beginning its slow slide toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Lucas's legs ached in the satisfying way that came from good exercise, and his chest felt light in a way that had nothing to do with the physical exertion. I'm starving, Claire said as they reached their cars. There's a pizza place in town that's supposed to be amazing. Would you want to grab dinner? Lucas checked his phone. No messages from Sarah, which meant Ethan was fine and probably deep into his Lego project. Yeah, that sounds great. They drove separately into town, Lucas following Claire's sedan through the winding mountain roads. The pizza place turned out to be a small, family-owned restaurant with checkered tablecloths and the kind of authentic Italian atmosphere that couldn't be faked. The smell of baking dough and garlic hit Lucas the moment they walked in. They ordered a large pizza to share, half margarita for Claire, half pepperoni for Lucas, and settled into a corner booth. The restaurant was busy with the dinner rush, filled with the comfortable noise of families and couples and friends enjoying their Saturday evening. So, Claire said, pulling apart a breadstick, tell me more about your carpentry. How did you get into it? Lucas leaned back against the worn vinyl of the booth. My grandfather. He had a workshop in his garage, and when I was a kid, I'd spend hours out there with him. He taught me how to read wood grain, how to use hand tools, how to be patient with the process. A smile tugged at his mouth. I remember the first thing I ever built, a birdhouse. It was crooked and the roof didn't quite fit, but I was so proud of it. Do you still have it? No, but my grandfather kept it in his workshop until he died. My grandmother gave it back to me after the funeral. It's in Ethan's room now. Claire's expression softened. That's beautiful. What about you? Lucas asked. How'd you end up in project management? Accidentally, honestly. Claire laughed. I studied environmental science in college, thought I'd work for a nonprofit or the Park Service. But I needed money, so I took a temp job at a tech company doing administrative work. Turned out I was really good at organizing complex projects and keeping people on task. One thing led to another, and here I am, managing software development teams instead of tracking wolf populations. Do you miss it? The environmental work? Sometimes. I miss feeling like what I did had direct, visible impact. But I'm good at what I do now, and it pays well. That matters when you're building a life on your own terms. She paused. Though I've been thinking lately about making a change, maybe finding work that feels more meaningful. Yeah? What would that look like? I don't know yet. That's the scary part. Claire met his eyes. I've been playing it safe for a long time. Doing the practical thing, the responsible thing, but practical doesn't always mean right. The pizza arrived, interrupting their conversation. It was exactly as good as promised. Thin crust charred in spots, fresh mozzarella, basil that tasted like summer. They ate in companionable silence for a few minutes, the kind of quiet that felt natural rather than awkward. Can I ask you something personal? Claire said after a while. Sure. When Jennifer left, how did you manage? Financially, logistically, emotionally? That must have been overwhelming. Lucas wiped his hands on a napkin, considering. It was. The first few months were brutal. I was working full-time, trying to take care of a 2-year-old dealing with the divorce. I barely slept. My sister helped a lot. She'd take Ethan some nights so I could catch up on work. And I learned to let go of perfection. The house wasn't always clean. Dinner was sometimes chicken nuggets. We survived more than we thrived. But you did survive. Yeah. And gradually it got easier. Ethan got older, more independent. I figured out a routine. I built up my client base enough to have some financial stability. We found our rhythm. He looked at her directly. But I won't lie. It's still hard sometimes. There are nights when he's sick, and I haven't slept, and I have a deadline, and I wonder how I'm going to make it all work. But then he'll do something that makes me laugh, or he'll tell me he loves me completely unprompted, and I remember why it's worth it. Claire reached across the table and squeezed his hand. You're a good father, Lucas. I hope you know that. I'm trying to be. You are. Trust me. They finished dinner as the restaurant began to empty, the Saturday rush giving way to a quieter evening crowd. When the check came, they split it despite Lucas's half-hearted protest. Outside, the air had cooled considerably, carrying the sharp bite of mountain autumn. I should probably head home, Lucas said, though he didn't particularly want to. Early pickup tomorrow from Sarah's. Of course. Claire walked with him toward his truck. Thank you for today, for the hike, for dinner, for all of it. Thank you for asking me. He paused, gathering courage. I'd like to see you again. Soon, if possible. I'd like that too. She smiled up at him. Although I should probably meet Ethan at some point. If this is going to be real, I want to know all of you, not just the parts that fit neatly into date nights. Lucas's heart did something complicated in his chest. Fear and hope tangled together so tightly he couldn't separate them. You're sure? Because once you meet him, this gets real. This gets complicated. I'm sure. There was no hesitation in her voice. I'm not interested in easy, remember? I'm interested in you, and he's part of you. Okay, Lucas exhaled slowly. Okay, let me think about timing. Maybe next weekend. Something casual, low pressure. Whatever feels right to you. I'll follow your lead. They stood there in the parking lot, neither quite ready to say goodbye. Finally, Claire stood on her toes and kissed his cheek, a brief, warm touch that sent electricity through him. Drive safe, she said. You too. Lucas watched her drive away, then sat in his truck for a long moment, processing the day. His phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. Ethan wants to know if you can pick him up early tomorrow. Something about an urgent Lego situation. He smiled and texted back. Tell him I'll be there by 9. The drive home felt different than usual, lighter somehow, as if the familiar roads had shifted into a brighter version of themselves. Lucas found himself already planning the next weekend, already imagining how to introduce Claire to Ethan in a way that wouldn't overwhelm either of them. That night, lying in bed, he received another text from Claire. Still thinking about today. Thank you for trusting me with your story. Thank you for listening, he wrote back, and for not running away. I'm not going anywhere. Lucas fell asleep with those words warm in his mind. Sunday morning arrived bright and clear. Lucas picked up Ethan from Sarah's at 9 sharp, listening to an enthusiastic debriefing about the Lego spaceship, which was apparently the biggest thing I've ever built, Dad. You have to see it. I can't wait, Lucas said honestly. Ethan talked nonstop the entire drive home, his small hands gesturing wildly as he described the ship's features. Lucas loved these moments, the pure, unfiltered joy his son brought to everything he cared about. Back at the cabin, they spent the afternoon working on projects. Ethan played with his Legos in the living room while Lucas worked in his attached workshop, the door open between them so they could talk. Lucas had started the train set for Claire's nephew, and the familiar work of shaping and sanding brought its own kind of peace. Dad? Ethan's voice drifted from the living room. Yeah, buddy. Are you happy? Lucas looked up from the piece of oak in his hands. What makes you ask that? Ethan appeared in the doorway, his expression serious in the way only 7-year-olds could manage. You've been smiling a lot, and you keep looking at your phone. Lucas felt his face heat. I am happy. Is that okay? Yeah, it's good. Ethan studied him with those perceptive eyes that saw too much. Aunt Sarah said you went on a date yesterday. I did. Was it nice? It was really nice. Ethan nodded, absorbing this information. Are you going to go on more dates? Lucas set down his tools and gave his son his full attention. I think so. How would you feel about that? I don't know. Ethan's honesty was refreshing. I never really thought about it before. That's fair. It's new for me too. Lucas chose his words carefully. But I want you to know that no matter what, you're the most important person in my life. That doesn't change. Ever. I know, Dad. Ethan rolled his eyes in that way he'd recently adopted, trying to seem older than he was. I'm not a baby. No, you're not. You're a pretty smart kid. The smartest, Ethan corrected with a grin, and Lucas laughed. The week that followed settled into familiar patterns, but with a new undercurrent of anticipation. Lucas worked on his projects, took care of Ethan, managed the logistics of single parenthood, but he also texted with Claire throughout the days. Good morning messages, photos of interesting moments, late-night conversations after Ethan was asleep. They talked about everything and nothing. Claire sent him a picture of a terrible coffee from a work meeting. He sent her a photo of a dining table he'd just finished, the grain pattern particularly beautiful. She asked about Ethan's week at school. He asked about her upcoming project deadline. It was domestic and ordinary and exactly what Lucas hadn't known he wanted. On Wednesday evening, after Ethan was in bed, Lucas called Claire. Hey, she answered, and he could hear the smile in her voice. This is becoming a nice habit. I've been thinking about this weekend, Lucas said, about you meeting Ethan. Okay. Her tone was carefully neutral, giving him space. I thought maybe we could do something casual. Maybe go to the park Saturday afternoon. There's a playground he loves, and we could bring a picnic. Low pressure, easy to leave if it gets weird. That sounds perfect. Relief colored her words. What should I know? Any topics to avoid, things he's sensitive about? Lucas appreciated that she asked. He's pretty easygoing generally. He loves dinosaurs, space, building things. He'll probably bombard you with facts. Just be yourself. He's good at sensing when adults aren't being genuine. I can do that. And Claire, don't try too hard to make him like you. He'll either connect with you or he won't, and that's not something that can be forced. I understand. She paused. Thank you for this. For trusting me with him. You haven't scared me off yet, Lucas said lightly, though his chest felt tight with the weight of what this meant. Saturday afternoon arrived with perfect autumn weather, sunny but cool, the leaves beginning to turn in brilliant shades of gold and crimson. Lucas picked out Ethan's favorite outfit, his dinosaur t-shirt and comfortable jeans, and tried not to telegraph his own nervousness. So, we're meeting your friend today? Ethan asked as Lucas packed sandwiches and fruit into a cooler. Yeah, her name is Claire. I think you'll like her. Is she nice? Very nice. Does she like dinosaurs? Lucas smiled. I don't know, but you can tell her about them. They arrived at the park 15 minutes early. Lucas spread a blanket under a large oak tree, the cooler and a bag of toys beside it. Ethan immediately ran toward the playground equipment, climbing on the structure with the fearless energy of childhood. Lucas checked his phone. A text from Claire. 5 minutes away. Nervous. Me too, he wrote back. It'll be fine. I hope so. Lucas watched the parking lot, his stomach in knots. This was different from the dates, from the texts and calls. This was introducing two parts of his life that had been separate, and if it went badly, there would be no easy way to walk it back. Claire's car pulled into the lot. Lucas watched her get out, saw her take a deep breath before heading toward them. She dressed carefully casual, jeans, a simple green sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked beautiful and terrified. Hey, she said as she approached. Hey. Lucas stood, resisting the urge to pull her into a hug. Not yet. Not in front of Ethan. He's on the playground. Let me get him. Lucas, wait. Claire caught his arm. I just want to say, I know this is important. I'll follow your lead, okay? Just tell me if I'm doing something wrong. You'll be fine, he assured her, though his heart was hammering. He walked to the edge of the playground. Ethan, come here for a minute, buddy. Ethan slid down the slide and ran over, his cheeks flushed from exertion. He stopped short when he saw Claire, suddenly shy. "Ethan, this is my friend Claire. Claire, this is Ethan." "Hi, Ethan," Claire said, crouching down to his level. "It's really nice to meet you. Your dad has told me a lot about you." Ethan looked at his father, then back at Claire. "Hi." "I like your shirt," Claire said. "Is that a velociraptor?" Ethan's eyes lit up slightly. "Yeah, did you know they had feathers?" "I did know that, actually. I think it's cool that scientists keep discovering new things about dinosaurs." "Me too." Ethan warmed up a fraction. "What's your favorite dinosaur?" Claire considered seriously. "I always thought ankylosauruses were really interesting. The tail club is pretty amazing." "That's a good choice," Ethan said with the solemn authority of a 7-year-old expert. "They were like tanks." "Exactly," Claire smiled. "Do you want to show me the playground?" Ethan glanced at Lucas again, checking for permission. Lucas nodded, and Ethan grabbed Claire's hand unselfconsciously, tugging her toward the equipment. Lucas watched them go, his throat tight. Claire listened attentively as Ethan explained the proper technique for the monkey bars, asking questions and nodding seriously. She didn't condescend or patronize. She just talked to him like a person. They played for half an hour, Claire gamely following Ethan through his favorite activities. She climbed the ladder to the slide, went across the wobbly bridge, even tried the monkey bars with mixed success that made Ethan laugh. Lucas stayed on the blanket, watching, his heart doing complicated things in his chest. Eventually, Ethan declared himself hungry, and they returned to the blanket. Lucas distributed sandwiches and juice boxes, Claire settling cross-legged on the blanket with easy comfort. "So, Claire," Ethan said around a bite of peanut butter and jelly, "do you build things like my dad?" "Not like your dad. He's much better at it than I am, but I do like making things. I knit sometimes." "What's knit?" "It's making things out of yarn, like sweaters or blankets." Ethan considered this. "That sounds hard." "It can be, but it's also relaxing, kind of like how your dad says working with wood helps him think." Ethan nodded sagely. "Dad thinks a lot when he's in his workshop." "What do you think about?" Claire asked Lucas. "Lots of things. Work, Ethan, whether I measured something correctly before cutting." He met her eyes. "Lately, other things too." Color touched Claire's cheeks, and she smiled. They ate lunch together, the conversation flowing naturally. Ethan told Claire about his school, his best friend Marcus. He's named after Dad's friend, but they're different people. And his current obsession with building a Lego model of the solar system. "That sounds ambitious," Claire said. "It is, but Dad says ambitious is good if you work hard." "Your dad is right about that." After lunch, Ethan returned to the playground, and Lucas and Claire sat together on the blanket, shoulders touching. "He's wonderful," Claire said quietly. "You've done an amazing job with him." "He makes it easy, most of the time." Lucas watched his son swing across the monkey bars with fierce concentration. "What do you think?" "Honestly." "Honestly? I think he's smart and funny and sweet. I think he's been raised by someone who really sees him and values him." She turned to look at Lucas. "And I think I could really care about him. About both of you." Lucas's breath caught. "Yeah?" "Yeah." Her hand found his. "This doesn't scare me, Lucas. It makes me more sure." They sat like that, fingers intertwined, watching Ethan play. And Lucas felt something settle in his chest, the beginning of trust, the first tentative steps toward believing this might actually work. The afternoon stretched into early evening. They played tag, pushed Ethan on the swings, explored the nature trail that wound around the park's edge. Claire was patient and engaged, never checking her phone or seeming bored. She genuinely enjoyed Ethan's company, and Ethan, in turn, warmed to her with each passing hour. As the sun began to set, they packed up to leave. Ethan was tired but happy, grass-stained and wind-blown. "Claire, can you come to our house sometime?" he asked as they walked to the parking lot. "Dad has a really cool workshop." Claire looked at Lucas, checking. He nodded slightly. "I'd love to," she said, "if it's okay with your dad." "It's definitely okay with me," Lucas said. They said goodbye at the cars. Ethan gave Claire an unprompted hug that made her eyes shine suspiciously bright. "Thank you for playing with me," he said. "Thank you for showing me the playground. I had a really good time." In the truck, Ethan was quiet for a few minutes, processing. Then, "Dad, I like Claire." Lucas smiled. "But Lucas." "Yeah, buddy. Me too." "Is she going to be around a lot? Would that be okay with you?" Ethan thought about it seriously. "Yeah, she's nice, and she's smart about dinosaurs." "High praise," Lucas said, his chest warm. That night, after Ethan was asleep, Lucas called Claire. "Hey," she answered. "Is he down?" "Out cold. Today wore him out." Lucas settled into his worn armchair. "Thank you for today, for being so good with him." "I wasn't pretending, Lucas. I really enjoyed it. He's a special kid. He asked if you could come over sometime, see the workshop." "I'd love that." He heard the smile in her voice. "Whenever you're ready." They talked for an hour, voices soft in the darkness. Claire told him how nervous she'd been, how much she'd wanted Ethan to like her. Lucas confessed how terrified he'd been that it would go badly, that she'd realize what she was signing up for and retreat. "I'm not retreating," Claire said firmly. "I'm all in, Lucas, if you'll have me." "I want to be all in too, but I need to go slow, for Ethan's sake, for mine." "Slow is good. Slow means we're building something that lasts." They said goodnight reluctantly, neither wanting to hang up, and Lucas lay in bed afterward, staring at the ceiling, feeling something like hope taking root in his chest. The following week, Claire came to dinner. Lucas cooked his specialty, grilled chicken with roasted vegetables. While Ethan set the table with exaggerated care, Claire brought homemade cookies and a Lego set for Ethan that made his eyes go huge. "You didn't have to do that," Lucas said quietly as Ethan tore into the packaging. "I wanted to." Claire met his eyes. "Is it okay?" "It's perfect." Dinner was easy and warm, conversation flowing naturally. Claire asked Ethan about school, complimented the meal, helped clear the table without being asked. Afterward, they all sat in the living room while Ethan built his new Lego set, narrating every step. Lucas showed Claire his workshop, pride evident as he explained his current projects. She asked intelligent questions, genuinely interested, running her hands over the smooth wood surfaces. "You make beautiful things," she said. "I try." "No, I mean it. There's real artistry here, Lucas. You should be proud." He ducked his head, embarrassed and pleased. "Thanks." When Claire left that evening, Ethan hugged her again, and Lucas walked her to her car. "This is good," Claire said softly. "All of this. It feels right." "It does," Lucas agreed, "which kind of terrifies me." "Me too. But maybe that's how you know it matters." She kissed him then, brief and gentle, but full of promise. Lucas held her close for a moment, breathing in her scent, feeling the solid reality of her in his arms. "Good night, Claire." "Good night, Lucas." He watched her drive away, then returned inside to find Ethan watching him with knowing eyes. "You like her a lot, don't you, Dad?" Lucas ruffled his son's hair. "Yeah, buddy, I really do." "Good," Ethan said simply. "She makes you smile." And Lucas realized his 7-year-old son had seen what he'd been afraid to admit, that Claire had already become important, that she'd found her way into their carefully constructed life and made it better. That night, he allowed himself to believe it might just work. The weeks that followed took on a gentle rhythm that felt both new and natural. Claire started coming to dinner twice a week, sometimes bringing ingredients and cooking alongside Lucas while Ethan did homework at the kitchen table. She learned which cabinet held the plates, where Lucas kept the good cutting knife, how he liked his coffee in the morning when she occasionally stayed over after Ethan was asleep. It was domesticity creeping in slowly, carefully, like morning light through curtains. Lucas found himself relaxing into it in ways he hadn't expected. He'd been braced for disaster. For the moment when Claire would realize that dating a single father meant canceled plans and interrupted conversations, and a 7-year-old's needs taking priority over romantic spontaneity. But that moment never came. Instead, Claire folded herself into their life with a grace that took his breath away. She showed up to Ethan's school play on a Wednesday evening, sitting between Lucas and Sarah, applauding wildly when Ethan delivered his 3 lines as tree number 2. She didn't make a big deal of it, Didn't act like her presence was some grand gesture. She just came because Ethan had mentioned it mattered to him, and that was enough. You didn't have to come, Lucas said afterward as they walked to the parking lot, Ethan running ahead with his friend Marcus. I wanted to, Claire said simply. He worked hard on those lines. Someone should be there to celebrate that. Lucas pulled her close, kissing her temple. Thank you. But not everything was easy. There were moments when Lucas felt the weight of his situation pressing down, reminding him that what he was asking Claire to accept wasn't simple or uncomplicated. It happened on a Friday night in late October. Lucas and Claire had planned to go out, a real date, dinner at the Italian place they both loved, but Ethan came down with a stomach bug that afternoon. Lucas called Claire from his bathroom floor where he was sitting with his miserable son. I'm so sorry, he said, exhaustion evident in his voice. I have to cancel. He's really sick and I can't leave him. Of course you can't. Claire's response was immediate. Is he okay? Do you need anything? He'll be fine, just one of those things. Lucas rubbed his face. I'm sorry about dinner. Lucas, stop apologizing. He's sick. You're his dad. This is what parents do. She paused. Can I bring you anything? Ginger ale? Crackers? Kids' medicine? You don't have to do that. I know I don't have to. I want to. Text me a list. She showed up an hour later with bags from the pharmacy and grocery store. Lucas answered the door looking haggard, his shirt stained from where Ethan had gotten sick on him. You're a mess, Claire said, not unkindly. Yeah, well, occupational hazard. He took the bags. You really didn't need to come. I know. She stepped inside, setting her purse on the side table. How is he? Sleeping, finally. The fever broke about 20 minutes ago. Claire rolled up her sleeves. Okay, you go shower and change. I'll keep an ear out for him. Claire, Lucas, go. You smell like a locker room, and you need 5 minutes to yourself. I've got this. He wanted to argue, but the truth was he desperately needed a shower. He grabbed clean clothes and retreated to the bathroom, standing under the hot water until some of the tension left his shoulders. When he emerged 15 minutes later, he found Claire in Ethan's room, sitting in the chair beside his bed with a book in her lap. Ethan was still asleep, his small chest rising and falling steadily. The room smelled faintly of the eucalyptus spray Claire must have brought. She looked up when Lucas appeared in the doorway, putting a finger to her lips. Quietly, she stood and followed him out to the living room. He didn't wake up, she whispered. But I wanted to be there in case he did. Something cracked open in Lucas's chest. You didn't have to stay. I wanted to, and before you apologize again for ruining date night, don't. This is real life, Lucas. This is what it looks like to care about someone who has a child. I knew that going in. Lucas sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. Claire sat beside him, pulling his head onto her shoulder. I'm tired, he admitted quietly. I know you are. I never get a break. Even when he's at Sarah's, I'm still thinking about him, planning for him, worrying about him. And I love him more than anything, but sometimes I just feel human, Claire supplied gently. Lucas, you're allowed to be tired. You're allowed to wish for a night off. That doesn't make you a bad father. It makes you a person. I just keep waiting for you to realize this is too much, that I'm too much. Claire shifted so she could look at him directly. Listen to me. You're not too much. Ethan is not too much. This life you've built is not too much. Yes, it's complicated. Yes, it requires flexibility and patience, but it's also real and full of love and worth every bit of effort. She cupped his face in her hands. I'm not going anywhere, Lucas. Not because of a canceled date, not because your son gets sick, not because single parenthood is hard. I'm here because I choose to be. Every single day, I'm choosing this. Lucas kissed her then, grateful and relieved and still a little scared. I don't know what I did to deserve you. You were yourself, that was enough. They spent the rest of the evening on the couch, Claire's head on Lucas's shoulder while they watched a movie with the volume low. Every hour, Lucas checked on Ethan, and every time he returned, Claire was waiting for him with the same patient smile. Around midnight, Ethan woke up asking for water. Lucas brought it to him, but Claire was the one who sat with him while he drank it slowly, telling him a quiet story about a brave knight who fought dragons while feeling seasick. Is Claire staying? Ethan asked when the story was done, his voice small and tired. If that's okay with you, Lucas said. It's okay. Ethan looked at Claire. Will you still be here in the morning? If you want me to be. I do. Lucas tucked his son back in, kissing his forehead. When they returned to the living room, Claire gathered her things. I'm going to head home, she said. Give you guys some space. You said you'd stay. Lucas, he's sick. You need to focus on him, not worry about hosting me. You're not a guest, Claire. Not anymore. The words came out more intense than he'd intended, but they were true. Somewhere in the past few weeks, Claire had stopped being the woman he was dating and become something more essential. Claire's eyes shone. Okay, I'll stay, but I'm sleeping on the couch. We have a guest room. The couch is fine. I want to be close in case either of you needs anything. That night, Lucas lay in his bed listening to the sounds of his house, Ethan's steady breathing down the hall, the occasional rustle as Claire shifted position on the couch. His family, he thought, not in the traditional sense, maybe, but in the way that mattered. People who chose each other, who showed up when things were hard, who stayed. The next morning, Ethan was much better. Claire made pancakes while Lucas helped his son with a bath, and they ate breakfast together with easy comfort. Afterward, Claire left to handle some errands, but not before extracting a promise from Ethan to rest and from Lucas to call if they needed anything. She's pretty great, huh? Lucas said to Ethan after she'd gone. Yeah. Ethan pushed his remaining pancake around his plate. Dad, is Claire going to be my mom? The question hit Lucas like a physical blow. He sat down carefully, choosing his words with care. I don't know, buddy. That's a really big question. I know, but I was just wondering. Ethan's expression was thoughtful, not anxious. I like her a lot. And she likes you. And she's nice to me even when I'm gross and sick. She is nice to you. But being someone's mom is more than just being nice. It's a really important, permanent thing. But you love her, right? Lucas's breath caught. He hadn't said those words out loud yet, not even to Claire. But sitting here with his son, looking into those perceptive 7-year-old eyes, he couldn't lie. Yeah, buddy, I think I do. Then maybe she could be, if she wants to. Maybe, Lucas allowed, but that's something that would happen slowly, over time, and we'd all have to talk about it together. Your feelings matter too. I know. Ethan smiled, apparently satisfied with this answer. Can I play Legos now? Sure, but take it easy, okay? Lucas watched his son head to the living room, his mind spinning. Love. He loved Claire. The realization settled over him with the certainty of fact, undeniable and slightly terrifying. His phone buzzed. A text from Claire. How's the patient? Much better, already asking to play Legos. That's a good sign. And how are you? Lucas stared at his phone, fingers hovering over the keyboard. He wanted to tell her, wanted to say the words that were burning in his chest, but not over text. Not like this. I'm good. Can we talk later? After Ethan's asleep? Of course. Call me anytime. The day passed quietly. Lucas worked on some sketches for a new commission while Ethan built and rebuilt various Lego structures. By evening, his son was back to his normal energy level, though Lucas made him go to bed at the regular time anyway. Once Ethan was settled, Lucas stepped outside onto his small porch and called Claire. Hey, she answered. How was the rest of your day? Good. Quiet. Lucas leaned against the porch railing, looking out at the dark shapes of pine trees against the starlit sky. Ethan asked me something this morning. What was it? He asked if you were going to be his mom. Silence on the other end, then, very quietly, what did you tell him? I told him I didn't know, that it was a big question and something we'd all have to decide together. Lucas took a breath. But Claire, he also asked me if I loved you. And I told him the truth, which is that I do. I love you. The words came easier than he'd expected, flowing out like water finding its path. I love how you show up, how you never make me feel like my life is an inconvenience. I love how you talk to Ethan like he matters, how you sat with him when he was sick, how you've made space for both of us without asking us to be different than we are. I love you and I probably should have said it before now, but I was scared. Lucas, her voice was thick with emotion. I love you too. I have for weeks, but I didn't want to pressure you or make you feel like I expected anything you weren't ready to give. I'm ready. And he was. The fear was still there. It probably always would be, but it was overshadowed by certainty. I'm ready to really do this, to build something real with you, if that's what you want. It's exactly what I want. He could hear her smile. I love you. I love Ethan. I love your messy, complicated, beautiful life, and I want to be part of it for as long as you'll have me. Relief and joy flooded through him in equal measure. Yeah? Yeah. They talked for another hour, voices soft and full of promise. They talked about this future in careful, hopeful terms, not making grand plans, but acknowledging that they were building towards something permanent. Claire mentioned that her company had offered her a fully remote position, which would give her more flexibility. Lucas talked about his dream of expanding his workshop, maybe taking on an apprentice. We're really doing this, Lucas said eventually, wonder in his voice. We really are. After they hung up, Lucas sat on his porch for a long time, feeling the weight of what they'd just committed to. It wasn't a proposal, not yet, but it was a promise to choose each other, to work through the hard parts, to build something that would last. The following weeks brought a shift in their relationship, subtle but significant. They moved with more certainty now, less hesitation. Claire kept clothes at the cabin. Lucas gave her a key. They fell into patterns that felt like practice for forever. But then, on a cold November evening, everything shifted. Lucas was in town picking up supplies when he saw her. Jennifer, his ex-wife. She was walking out of a coffee shop, looking exactly the same as she had 5 years ago. Same blonde hair, same casual elegance, same expression of mild dissatisfaction. Their eyes met. Lucas felt his whole body tense. Lucas, she said, stopping on the sidewalk. Wow, hi. Jennifer, his voice came out flat, carefully neutral. I heard you were still in the area. I wasn't sure if it was true. She shifted her expensive purse on her shoulder. You look good. Different, but good. What are you doing here? He didn't bother with pleasantries. I'm back. Moved here about a month ago. New job, fresh start, all that. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I've been meaning to reach out, actually. I wanted to talk to you about Ethan. Lucas's blood went cold. No. Lucas, just hear me out. No. You don't get to walk back into his life after 5 years. You made your choice. I made a mistake. For the first time, her composure cracked slightly. I was young and scared, and I handled it badly, but I've changed, I've been in therapy, I've worked through a lot of things, and I want to try to make amends. Amends. Lucas laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to make amends to the 7-year-old whose mother abandoned him, the kid who cried himself to sleep asking why Mama didn't love him anymore? Jennifer flinched. I know I hurt him, I hurt both of you, but people can change, Lucas. I'm not asking for custody or anything crazy. I just want a chance to know him, to be part of his life, even in a small way. Why now? Why after all this time? Because I finally dealt with my issues, because I realized what I gave up, because he's my son too, even if I failed him. She met his eyes. I'm not asking for your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. But maybe for Ethan's sake, we could find a way forward. Lucas felt like the ground had shifted beneath his feet. All the stability he'd built, all the careful progress, suddenly it felt fragile, threatened by this ghost from his past. I need to go, he said. Lucas, please. I said I need to go. He walked past her toward his truck, his hands shaking. He drove home on autopilot, his mind racing. Jennifer was back. Jennifer wanted to see Ethan. Jennifer thought she could just walk back into their lives after abandoning them. When he got home, Claire's car was in the driveway. Right, Friday. She was making dinner with Ethan. He sat in his truck for a moment, trying to compose himself, but his hands were still shaking. Claire met him at the door, her smile fading when she saw his face. Lucas, what's wrong? Is Ethan in his room playing? Talk to me. What happened? Lucas walked past her into the kitchen, leaning heavily against the counter. I saw Jennifer, my ex-wife. She's back in town. Claire went very still. Okay, and? And she wants to see Ethan, wants to make amends for abandoning him 5 years ago. The words came out bitter, harsh. What did you say? I said no. I told her she made her choice. He looked at Claire, seeing his own fear reflected in her eyes. But she has legal rights, Claire. She's his mother. If she pushes this, if she takes me to court, then you'll fight, Claire said firmly. You'll fight because you're his father and you've been there every single day of his life since she left. But what if she wins? What if some judge decides he needs his mother, decides that she's reformed or whatever? What if I lose him? You won't lose him. Not the ways that matter. Claire crossed to him, taking his shaking hands in hers. Lucas, breathe. You're spiraling. He pulled away, the fear and anger too big to contain. How can you be so calm about this? If she comes back, if she gets custody or even visitation, everything changes. Our whole life changes. I know that. Do you? Do you really? Because this isn't just about me and my past anymore. This affects you too. This affects what we're building. He ran his hands through his hair. Maybe you should reconsider before you get in too deep, before... Stop, Claire said quietly, but with steel in her voice. Don't do that. Don't use your fear as an excuse to push me away. I'm not... Yes, you are. You're scared, so you're trying to give me an out. But I don't want an out, Lucas. I want to be here. With you, through this. You don't know what you're signing up for. Then tell me. She crossed her arms. Tell me exactly what I'm signing up for. The worst case scenario. All of it. Lucas stared at her, something breaking loose in his chest. Jennifer could fight for custody. She could disrupt Ethan's entire life, confuse him, hurt him all over again. And even if she doesn't get custody, she could get visitation. We'd have to co-parent with someone who walked away. Our plans, our life, it would all have to accommodate her. And you'd be stuck in the middle of it, dealing with my ex-wife drama for years. Okay, Claire said simply. Okay? That's all you have to say? What do you want me to say? That I'm thrilled about it? I'm not. That I think it'll be easy? It won't. But Lucas, I'm not with you because your life is simple. I'm with you because I love you, all of you, including the messy, complicated parts. This is different. It's not, though. Claire moved closer, her expression intense. This is exactly what I signed up for, a real life with real complications. I told you I wasn't interested in easy, remember? I meant it. Lucas felt tears prick his eyes. I'm terrified. I know you are. I'm scared too. But we'll figure it out together. What if we can't? What if this breaks everything we're building? Then we'll build something new. But Lucas, you don't get to make decisions for me. You don't get to decide that I can't handle this. I'm here. I'm staying. The question is, are you going to trust me enough to let me? The words hit him like cold water, cutting through the panic. She was right. He was trying to protect her, yes, but he was also trying to protect himself. If he pushed her away now, he couldn't be hurt when she left later. I'm sorry, he said quietly. You're right. I'm scared and I'm trying to control the damage before it happens. I get it, but you don't have to do that, not with me. Lucas pulled her close, holding her tight. She wrapped her arms around him, solid and real and present. I love you, he said against her hair. I love you too, and we're going to get through this. That night, after Ethan was asleep, Lucas told Claire everything. About his marriage to Jennifer, about how it had slowly unraveled after Ethan was born, about the day she left and the months that followed, about the legal proceedings where she'd signed away her rights without a second thought. She was so certain, he said, so absolutely sure she didn't want to be a mother, and now she's back saying she's changed? How am I supposed to believe that? You probably can't, Claire said honestly. Not right away. But Lucas, you need to think about what's best for Ethan, not what punishes Jennifer or protects you. What does he need? He doesn't need her walking back in like the past 5 years didn't happen. Maybe not, but maybe he needs the chance to know his mother, even if that relationship looks different than a typical parent-child relationship. Claire held up her hand when Lucas started to protest. I'm not saying you should just let her have access. I'm saying you need to think carefully about this. Talk to a lawyer. Figure out what your options are. Make decisions based on facts, not fear. Lucas knew she was right, even though every instinct in him wanted to shut Jennifer out completely. I'll call my lawyer Monday. Good. And in the meantime, we focus on what we can control. We keep Ethan's routine stable. We don't tell him anything until we know what's happening. And we remember that whatever comes, we're facing it together. Together, Lucas repeated, drawing strength from the word. But that night, lying in bed, Lucas couldn't sleep. His mind kept spinning through scenarios, each worse than the last. Jennifer getting partial custody, Ethan confused and hurt by her sudden reappearance, their careful, happy life thrown into chaos. And underneath it all, a deeper fear, that this was the thing that would finally be too much for Claire, that she'd stay now, out of loyalty or love, but eventually the strain would break them apart. He must have dozed off eventually, because he woke to find weak morning sunlight filtering through the curtains and Claire's side of the bed empty. He could hear voices from the kitchen, Claire and Ethan, talking quietly over breakfast. Lucas lay there for a moment, listening. Ethan was telling Claire about a project at school, his voice animated. Claire asked questions, made encouraging sounds, laughed at his jokes. It was so domestic, so normal, so much like the future Lucas had been building in his mind. And he realized with sudden clarity that he couldn't let fear steal this from them. Whatever happened with Jennifer, whatever complications arose, he had to trust that what he and Claire had built was strong enough to withstand it. He got up, pulled on a shirt, and went to join his family in the kitchen. Claire looked up as Lucas entered the kitchen, her face breaking into a warm smile that steadied something in his chest. Ethan was mid-sentence about dinosaurs, always dinosaurs, with a mouthful of pancake, and the scene was so perfectly ordinary that Lucas felt his throat tighten. "Morning, sleepyhead," Claire said, pouring him coffee without asking. She knew how he took it now, knew that he needed caffeine before conversation on weekend mornings. "Morning." Lucas kissed the top of Ethan's head, then Claire's cheek, letting himself sink into the moment. Whatever storm was coming, they had this. Right here, right now, they had this. The weekend passed in deliberate normalcy. Lucas took Ethan to soccer practice, while Claire worked on a presentation for an upcoming meeting. They cooked dinner together, watched a movie, read bedtime stories. Lucas didn't mention Jennifer, and Claire didn't push. They existed in a bubble of present tense, postponing the difficult conversations until Monday. But Monday came anyway, as Mondays do. Lucas called his lawyer first thing, a woman named Patricia Rodriguez, who'd handled his divorce years ago. She listened carefully as he explained the situation, asking pointed questions about Jennifer's intentions and what she'd said specifically. "She doesn't have much ground to stand on legally," Patricia said when he finished. "She signed away her parental rights. That's not something courts take lightly. But if she's claiming she was coerced or not in her right mind at the time, she could petition for reinstatement. She wasn't coerced. She was relieved. I believe you, Lucas, but we need to be prepared for the possibility that she'll try anyway." Patricia's voice was professional, but kind. "Has she contacted you again since that first encounter?" "No, not yet." "If she does, don't engage beyond basic civility. Document everything, texts, emails, any attempts at contact, and definitely don't agree to anything without running it past me first." "What about Ethan? Do I tell him she's back?" Patricia was quiet for a moment. "That's not a legal question, that's a parenting one. But if I were you, I'd wait until we know more. No point in disrupting his world for something that might not materialize." Lucas thanked her and hung up, feeling marginally better. At least he had a plan, a strategy. He wasn't just flailing in the dark. Claire called during her lunch break. "How'd it go with the lawyer?" "Okay, she says Jennifer doesn't have much legal standing, but we need to be prepared just in case." Lucas leaned back in his workshop chair, running his free hand over a piece of maple he was sanding. "She said to document everything and not engage." "That sounds reasonable." "Yeah." He paused. "Claire, I've been thinking about what you said the other night about what's best for Ethan. And I need you to know I'm not trying to punish Jennifer. I'm trying to protect my son." "I know that, Lucas. I never thought otherwise. But you were right that I need to separate my anger from what he needs. So I'm going to try. If she contacts me again, I'll listen. I won't promise anything, but I'll listen. That's all anyone can ask. He could hear the pride in Claire's voice. I'm proud of you. Don't be proud yet. I might still lose my mind when I actually have to talk to her. Claire laughed softly. If you do, I'll be there to help you find it again. 3 days passed with no word from Jennifer. Lucas started to hope that maybe she'd changed her mind, that the encounter downtown had been a momentary impulse she'd already abandoned. But on Thursday evening, as he was closing up his workshop, his phone buzzed with an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Lucas, it's Jennifer. Her voice was tentative, careful. Please don't hang up. Every muscle in his body tensed. What do you want? Just to talk. 5 minutes, that's all I'm asking. When he didn't immediately refuse, she continued, I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know I hurt you and Ethan in ways that can't be undone. But I meant what I said the other day. I want to try to make things right. You can't make this right, Jennifer. You can't undo 5 years of absence. I know that, but maybe I can build something new, something different. She took a breath. I'm not asking for custody or even regular visitation. I just want the chance to know him, to let him know that I think about him, that leaving was about my own brokenness, not about him. Lucas closed his eyes, Patricia's words echoing in his mind. Document everything. Don't engage. But underneath that was Claire's voice. What does Ethan need? Why now? He asked. What changed? I got sober. Really sober. Not just the temporary kind. Jennifer's voice cracked slightly. I spent 2 years in intensive therapy dealing with postpartum depression that never got treated, with the anxiety that made me feel like I was drowning every day. I did the work, Lucas. The hard, painful work of figuring out why I ran and how to be better. Lucas wanted to hang up, wanted to tell her that her personal growth didn't erase what she'd done. But there was something in her voice, genuine remorse maybe, or real understanding of the damage she'd caused that made him keep listening. Ethan is 7 now. He's smart and happy and well-adjusted. He has a good life without you in it. I know. And if you decide that's what's best for him, I'll respect that. I will. But Lucas, I'm his mother. Biologically, legally, until I sign those papers, fundamentally. And he might have questions someday about why I left. Don't you think it would be better if he could hear the truth from me? If he could know that it wasn't his fault? He already knows it wasn't his fault. Does he? Really? Or does he just say that because you've told him 1,000 times? Jennifer's voice was quiet. I was 7 once too. I remember how things felt at that age, how you internalize everything, even when adults tell you not to. Lucas hated that she had a point, hated that somewhere in her self-serving arguments was a kernel of truth he couldn't ignore. I need to think about this, he said finally. I need to talk to some people. Okay, that's fair. Jennifer sounded relieved that he hadn't shut her down completely. Can I give you my number so you can reach me when you've decided? I already have it from this call. Right, of course. There was a pause. Lucas, thank you for listening. I know I don't deserve it. You're right, you don't. He hung up before she could respond. His hands were shaking. He sat in his workshop for a long time, surrounded by wood shavings and half-finished projects, trying to process the conversation. Part of him wanted to ignore Jennifer's request, to protect the life he'd built. But another part, the part that wanted to be the kind of father who made decisions based on wisdom rather than fear, knew he needed to really consider this. He called Claire. She contacted me, he said without preamble. Jennifer, she wants to meet Ethan. Okay. Claire's voice was calm, grounding. What did she say exactly? Lucas recounted the conversation, not leaving anything out. Claire listened without interrupting, the way she always did when something was important. What are you thinking? She asked when he finished. I'm thinking I want to protect him from getting hurt. I'm thinking she doesn't deserve to waltz back in after abandoning him. I'm thinking... He stopped, forced himself to be honest. I'm thinking maybe she has a point, that he might have questions someday, and it would be better if he had answers. Those are all valid thoughts. But what do I do, Claire? How do I decide something this big? You talk to people who love Ethan, your sister, your lawyer, maybe even a child psychologist who can tell you what's developmentally appropriate. She paused. And you talk to me. We figure this out together. Lucas felt some of the tension ease from his shoulders. Can you come over tonight? After Ethan's asleep? I'm already on my way. When Claire arrived an hour later, Ethan was in bed and Lucas had made coffee that neither of them touched. They sat on the couch, Claire's legs tucked under her, Lucas's elbows on his knees. I talked to Sarah, Lucas said. She thinks I should at least consider it. Says that kids are resilient and that having more information is usually better than having less. What does your gut say? My gut says to protect him at all costs. But my gut also said to never trust anyone with my heart again, and then you happened. He looked at her. So maybe my gut isn't always right. Claire took his hand. I think you're afraid that if you let Jennifer back in any capacity, it diminishes what you've built with Ethan, that it somehow suggests he needed her when he's thrived without her. Maybe. But, Lucas, letting her have a small, carefully controlled presence in his life doesn't erase the fact that you've been there every single day. You're his father. You raised him. You know his favorite foods and his fears and what makes him laugh. She can never take that away from you. Lucas leaned into her, drawing strength from her solid presence. What if he likes her? What if he wants more time with her and it disrupts everything? Then you deal with that when it happens. But you can't make decisions based on worst-case scenarios that might never materialize. She turned his face toward hers. You taught me that, actually. When I was scared about meeting Ethan, you told me to trust the process. Maybe it's time to take your own advice. He kissed her, grateful beyond words for her presence in his life. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just weren't paying attention. They talked for hours, weighing options and outcomes. By the time Claire left, she had an early meeting and needed to go home. Lucas had made a decision. He would meet with Jennifer first, without Ethan. He would lay out clear boundaries and expectations, and then, if she agreed to his terms, he would consider allowing a single, supervised meeting. The next morning, Lucas called Jennifer back. I'll meet with you, he said. Just you and me. But we do this my way, on my terms. And if I decide at any point that this isn't good for Ethan, it stops. No arguments, no fighting, it just stops. Okay. Jennifer's relief was palpable. Thank you, Lucas. When? Tomorrow, Saturday. There's a coffee shop on Main Street, 2 o'clock. I'll be there. Lucas spent Friday in a state of controlled anxiety. He worked on a dining table commission, the repetitive motions of planing and sanding helping to settle his mind. Ethan had a playdate with Marcus, which meant Lucas had several hours alone with his thoughts. He called Patricia to update her. Good, she said. Meeting her first is smart. Get a sense of where her head is, what she really wants. And Lucas? Record the conversation if you can, just audio on your phone. We may need it later. Isn't that illegal? Colorado is a one-party consent state. As long as you're part of the conversation, you can record it. Just don't tell her you are. Lucas felt vaguely uncomfortable with the duplicity, but he understood the necessity. Okay. Saturday arrived cold and clear. Lucas dropped Ethan at Sarah's for the afternoon, making up an excuse about errands. His sister saw through it immediately. You're meeting her, aren't you? Yeah. Want me to come as backup? Lucas smiled despite his nerves. No, but thanks. Call me after. I want to know how it goes. The coffee shop was moderately busy when Lucas arrived 10 minutes early. He ordered coffee he didn't want and claimed a table in the back corner. Then he pulled out his phone, opened the voice recorder app, and set it face down on the table. Jennifer arrived exactly at 2. She looked different than she had earlier that week, less polished, more nervous. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back. Without makeup, Lucas could see the fine lines around her eyes, the evidence of the years that had passed. Hi, she said quietly, sliding into the seat across from him. Hey. Awkward silence stretched between them. Finally, Jennifer spoke. I don't really know where to start. Start with why you left, Lucas said bluntly. The real reason, not the sanitized version you give people at parties. Jennifer flinched but didn't look away. I left because I was drowning and I didn't know how to ask for help. Because every day felt like this impossible mountain I couldn't climb. Because when I looked at Ethan, all I felt was this crushing guilt that I wasn't enough for him. You were enough. You just didn't try. You're right. I didn't try hard enough. I was so overwhelmed by my own anxiety and depression that I couldn't see past it. And I was ashamed. Ashamed that I wasn't this natural mother who instantly bonded with her baby. Ashamed that I resented the crying and the sleepless nights and the way my entire identity had disappeared. She took a shaky breath. So I ran. I convinced myself that Ethan would be better off without me, that you were such a good father that I was basically unnecessary, and I left. And for 5 years you never looked back? That's not true. I looked back constantly, but I was such a mess that I knew coming back would only hurt him more, so I stayed away. I got sober. I went to therapy 3 times a week. I worked through the postpartum depression and the anxiety disorder I'd been ignoring since college. I learned how to be a person who could function, who could be responsible, who could potentially be worthy of knowing her son. Lucas studied her, looking for signs of deception or manipulation. But all he saw was exhaustion and genuine remorse. "What do you want from him?" he asked. "Really?" "I want him to know that I think about him, that leaving was about my own brokenness, not about anything he did or didn't do. I want him to have the option of knowing me, even if that relationship looks nothing like a typical mother-son relationship." Jennifer met his eyes. "I'm not trying to replace what you've built with him, Lucas. I'm not delusional enough to think I could, but maybe there's room for me somewhere on the periphery. As someone who cares about him, even if I lost the right to be his mother in the ways that matter." "He's happy," Lucas said. "He has a good life. Friends, school, activities. He has me and my sister," and he stopped himself, not quite ready to bring Claire into this conversation. "And someone else?" Jennifer's expression shifted into something that might have been curiosity or sadness. "You met someone. That's none of your business." "You're right. It's not." She looked down at her coffee. "I just hope she's good to him. Good to both of you." "She is." Lucas couldn't keep the warmth from his voice. "She's incredible." "Good. You deserve that." Jennifer's smile was sad. "You always deserved better than what I gave you." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Lucas leaned forward. "If I agree to let you meet him, and that's a big if, there are going to be rules, strict ones. Okay? First meeting is supervised. You, me, Ethan, and probably Claire. Somewhere public and neutral. You get 1 hour, that's it. And if at any point he's uncomfortable or upset, we leave. No arguments." "I understand." "Second, you don't make promises you can't keep. You don't tell him you'll be a regular part of his life unless you're absolutely certain you can follow through. Because if you disappoint him again, if you let him down after he's opened up to you, I will make sure you never get another chance. Are we clear?" "Crystal clear." "Third, this doesn't change anything legally. You signed away your rights. That stands. If you try to fight me for custody or formal visitation, this ends immediately and you'll never see him again. I'll make sure of it." Jennifer nodded. "I'm not trying to fight you, Lucas. I just want to know him, even a little." Lucas sat back, his coffee cold and untouched. His mind was already racing ahead, imagining the conversation he'd need to have with Ethan. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that the mother who left is back and wants to meet him? How do you prepare him for that without scaring him or getting his hopes up? "I need to talk to him first," Lucas said. "Prepare him. He doesn't remember you, Jennifer. To him, you're just a concept, a story I've told him about why his family looks different than his friends." "I know." Jennifer's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Whatever you think is best, I'll follow your lead. Give me a week. I'll call you once I've talked to him and figured out logistics." "Okay." She stood, hesitating. "Lucas, thank you. I know I don't deserve this chance, but thank you for giving it to me anyway." He didn't respond, just watched as she left. Then he sat alone in the coffee shop for another 20 minutes, trying to process what had just happened. He'd agreed to let Jennifer meet Ethan. After 5 years of absence, he was opening that door. It felt momentous and terrifying and possibly like the worst decision he'd ever made. He stopped the recording on his phone and texted Claire, "Done. Can we talk?" Her response came immediately. "Come over. I'm home. Lucas picked up Ethan from Sarah's, enduring his sister's questioning looks with vague responses. It went okay. I'll explain later. Back at home, he got Ethan settled with a movie and snacks, then told him he needed to go talk to Claire about something. Can I come? Ethan asked hopefully. Not this time, buddy, but I won't be long. Aunt Sarah's going to hang out with you for a bit. Sarah arrived within 15 minutes, and Lucas made the 20-minute drive to Claire's apartment in town. She met him at the door, pulling him inside and into her arms without a word. Tell me, she said. Lucas recounted the entire meeting, including Jennifer's explanations and his conditions. Claire listened, her expression thoughtful. How are you feeling? She asked when he finished. Terrified, angry, confused. He ran his hands through his hair. I keep second-guessing the decision. What if this breaks him? What if she hurts him all over again? Those are valid fears, but Lucas, you put safeguards in place. You're controlling the situation as much as anyone can, and you're doing this for the right reasons, because you think it might help Ethan in the long run, not because Jennifer guilted you into it. I need to tell him about her being back, about wanting to meet him, and I have no idea how. Claire took his hands. You tell him the truth in age-appropriate language. You let him ask questions. You reassure him that nothing changes how much you love him or your role in his life. And you give him the choice because at 7, he's old enough to have a say in whether he wants to meet her. What if he says no? Then you tell Jennifer no. You put Ethan's needs first, the way you always have. Lucas pulled Claire close, breathing in her familiar scent. I couldn't do this without you. You know that, right? Yes, you could. You're stronger than you think. She pulled back to look at him. But I'm glad you don't have to. That evening, after Sarah left and Ethan was winding down for bed, Lucas sat on the edge of his son's mattress. Ethan was arranging his stuffed animals in precise order, Triceratops first, then T-Rex, then the Stegosaurus. Buddy, can we talk about something important? Ethan looked up, his expression shifting to serious. Okay. Lucas took a breath, choosing his words carefully. Do you remember how we've talked about your birth mom? About how she left when you were little because she was dealing with some hard stuff? Yeah, you said she loved me but couldn't take care of me. That's right. Well, she's back in town, and she asked if she could meet you. Ethan went very still, his hands frozen on the stuffed T-Rex. Why? Because she wants you to know that she thinks about you, that leaving wasn't your fault, and because she wants to tell you that herself, if you want to hear it. Do I have to meet her? Lucas's chest tightened. No, buddy, you absolutely don't have to. This is your choice. If you're not ready or if you don't want to, that's completely okay. I'll tell her no, and that'll be the end of it. Ethan was quiet for a long moment, processing. Would you be there? If I met her? Yes, the whole time. Me and Claire both, if you want. And I could leave if I didn't like it? Absolutely. The second you're uncomfortable, we go. No questions asked. Ethan picked up his Triceratops, turning it over in his small hands. What's she like? Lucas chose his words carefully. I don't know her very well anymore. She's changed a lot. But she seems like she really does want to make things right, in whatever small way she can. Do you think I should meet her? I think that's up to you, buddy. But I will say this, sometimes having questions answered is better than wondering. And sometimes meeting someone from your past can help you understand your story better. Can I think about it? Of course. Take as much time as you need. Lucas kissed Ethan's forehead and turned off the light, leaving the door cracked the way his son liked. Then he went to the living room and called Claire. He's thinking about it, Lucas said. That's good. That means he's taking it seriously, not just reacting. What if he says yes and it's terrible? What if she hurts him? Then you'll be there to help him through it, the way you've been there for everything else. Claire's voice was steady. But Lucas, you can't protect him from every possible hurt. Sometimes you just have to trust that you've given him the tools to handle difficult things. When did you become so wise about parenting? About 5 minutes after meeting Ethan. He's a good teacher. Lucas smiled despite his anxiety. I love you. I love you too. And whatever happens, we'll handle it together. 3 days later, Ethan came to Lucas while he was working in his shop. Dad? I decided. Lucas set down his chisel, giving Ethan his full attention. Yeah? I want to meet her, but just once, and you and Claire have to be there. We will be. I promise. Lucas pulled his son into a hug. You're very brave, you know that? I'm a little scared, Ethan admitted against his shoulder. That's okay. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the thing even though you are. That evening, Lucas called Jennifer and arranged the meeting for the following Saturday at a park. Neutral ground, public, easy to leave if necessary. Then he called Claire and asked if she'd be there. Of course, she said without hesitation. Whatever you need. The week leading up to the meeting felt endless. Lucas found himself short-tempered and anxious, snapping at minor inconveniences and lying awake at night running through scenarios. Claire was patient with him, grounding him when his thoughts spiraled, reminding him that he was doing the right thing. Saturday arrived too quickly. Lucas dressed Ethan carefully, making sure he looked nice but comfortable. Claire arrived at their cabin an hour before they needed to leave, and her presence steadied both of them. You ready? She asked Ethan. I think so. His voice was small but determined. Remember, you can change your mind at any point. No one will be mad. I know. They drove to the park in Claire's car, Lucas too nervous to trust himself behind the wheel. Jennifer was already there, sitting on a bench near the playground. She stood when she saw them, her expression anxious and hopeful. Lucas took Ethan's hand. Claire stayed close on his other side. Together, they walked toward the woman who had left, and the uncertain moment that would shape everything that came after. Jennifer stood as they approached, her hands clasped tightly in front of her like she was physically holding herself together. Lucas felt Ethan's grip tighten on his hand, the small fingers squeezing hard enough to hurt. Claire's presence at their side was steady and calm, an anchor in the storm of this moment. Hi, Jennifer said softly, her eyes locked on Ethan with an intensity that made Lucas's protective instincts flare. Hi, Lucas responded, his voice carefully neutral. He crouched down to Ethan's level. Buddy, this is Jennifer. Jennifer, this is Ethan. Jennifer's eyes were already wet with tears, but she blinked them back, seeming to understand that crying would only make this harder for everyone. Hi, Ethan. Thank you for agreeing to meet me. Ethan pressed closer to Lucas's side, studying Jennifer with the serious, analytical gaze he used when examining something new and potentially dangerous. You're my birth mom. I am. Jennifer's voice wavered slightly. I know this is confusing and maybe scary. Is it okay if I sit down? Ethan looked at Lucas, who nodded. They all moved to a nearby picnic table, Jennifer on one side, Lucas and Ethan on the other, Claire standing close enough to intervene if needed, but far enough to give them space. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Finally, Jennifer spoke. I want to tell you that I'm sorry. I'm sorry I left when you were little. I'm sorry I wasn't there for your birthdays or when you learned to ride a bike or for any of the important moments. Her voice was thick with emotion but controlled. I was dealing with some really hard things in my own head, and I made a bad choice. I thought leaving would be better for you, but I was wrong. Ethan's expression didn't change. Dad said you were sick, in your brain. That's right, I had something called depression that made everything feel impossible, but that's not an excuse. I should have asked for help instead of leaving. Why didn't you? The question was so simple, so direct, so quintessentially Ethan, that Lucas felt his chest constrict. Jennifer took a shaky breath. Because I was scared and ashamed. I thought asking for help meant I was weak or a bad mom. I know now that was wrong, but at the time I couldn't see it. Ethan processed this, his face thoughtful. Are you still sick? I still have depression, but I take medicine now, and I talk to a doctor about it, so it's much better. I can handle things now that I couldn't before. Okay. Ethan's grip on Lucas's hand had loosened slightly. Dad takes really good care of me. I know he does. I can see that. Jennifer's smile was sad and genuine. You're lucky to have him. I am. Ethan looked up at Lucas with such pure love that it nearly broke him. Then he looked back at Jennifer. And I have Claire, too. She's Dad's girlfriend, and she's really nice. Jennifer's gaze shifted to Claire for the first time, really seeing her. Something passed across her face. Regret, maybe, or recognition of what she'd given up. It's nice to meet you, Claire. You too, Claire said quietly. They sat in awkward silence for a moment. Then Ethan, with the resilient curiosity of childhood, asked, "Do you like dinosaurs?" The question clearly caught Jennifer off guard. "I don't know much about them, honestly." "I love them, especially the ones with feathers. Did you know scientists keep discovering new things about them all the time?" "I didn't know that." Ethan launched into a detailed explanation of recent paleontological discoveries, and Lucas watched in amazement as his son bridged the impossible gap with the only tool he had: his genuine enthusiasm for the things he loved. Jennifer listened attentively, asking questions, and for a few minutes it almost felt normal. But then Ethan fell quiet again, his expression turning serious. "Are you going to leave again?" The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Jennifer's composure cracked, tears spilling over despite her efforts to contain them. "I'm not planning to be a regular part of your life, Ethan. Your dad and I agreed that I could meet you today, and after that, it's up to all of you whether you ever want to see me again. I'm not trying to be your mom in the everyday way. Your dad is your parent. I'm just someone who cares about you from a distance and wanted you to know that." Ethan seemed to accept this with remarkable equanimity. "That's okay. I already have a family." The simple statement was devastating in its clarity. Lucas felt Claire's hand on his shoulder, warm and supportive. Jennifer nodded, unable to speak for a moment. "You do. And it's a really good one." She wiped at her eyes. "Can I tell you one more thing before your dad decides this is enough for today?" Ethan looked at Lucas, who nodded slightly. "I want you to know that leaving had nothing to do with you. You were a perfect baby, and you're clearly an amazing kid. If I could go back and make different choices, I would. But I can't. So instead, I'm just going to tell you that I'm proud of who you're becoming, even though I don't get to see it every day. And I hope someday you can forgive me for not being strong enough to stay." Ethan thought about this seriously. "I don't really remember you, so there's not a lot to forgive. But I'm glad you're doing better now." The simple grace of childhood, Lucas thought, the ability to accept complexity without drowning in it. They stayed for another 15 minutes, the conversation becoming easier as they moved away from the heavy topics. Jennifer asked about school and friends, and Ethan answered with growing confidence. But Lucas could see the fatigue setting in around his son's eyes, the emotional toll of the meeting catching up with him. "I think we should probably head out," Lucas said gently. Jennifer nodded, understanding. She stood, hesitating, clearly wanting to hug Ethan, but uncertain if it would be welcome. Ethan solved the problem by standing up and offering his hand to shake, formal and polite. Jennifer shook it carefully, as if handling something precious and fragile. "Thank you for meeting me," she said. "You're welcome." Ethan turned to Lucas. "Can we go home now?" "Yeah, buddy, let's go home." As they walked back to the car, Lucas glanced over his shoulder once. Jennifer was still standing by the picnic table, watching them leave, her hand pressed to her mouth. He felt a complicated mix of emotions: anger at what she'd done, pity for what she'd lost, and gratitude that Ethan had handled it with such strength. In the car, Ethan was quiet. Claire drove while Lucas sat in the back with his son, who had climbed into the middle seat to be closer. "You okay?" Lucas asked softly. "Yeah, I'm just thinking." "About what?" "About how she seemed sad, but also about how I'm glad you're my dad and not someone else." Lucas's throat tightened. "I'm glad I'm your dad too. Being your father is the best thing that ever happened to me." "And meeting Claire is the second best thing?" Lucas looked at Claire in the rearview mirror, saw her smile. "Yeah, meeting Claire is definitely the second best thing." When they got home, Ethan went straight to his room with his Legos, needing the familiar comfort of building and destroying and building again. Lucas and Claire sat on the porch, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the yard. "He's incredible," Claire said quietly. "The way he handled that, the maturity, the kindness. You've raised an extraordinary kid, Lucas. I keep waiting for the breakdown, for the moment when it all hits him and he falls apart. Maybe there won't be one. Maybe he really is okay." She took his hand. "Not every difficult thing has to leave scars. Sometimes kids are more resilient than we give them credit for." "I hope you're right." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Claire said, "Can I ask you something?" "Always." Where do we go from here? With Jennifer, I mean. Is this it, or will there be more meetings? Lucas had been thinking about the same question. I think that's up to Ethan. If he wants to see her again, I'll consider it, but I won't push it. Today felt like closure in a way. He got to meet her, got to hear her apology, got to understand that her leaving wasn't his fault. Maybe that's enough. And what about us? Claire's voice was careful. Does this change anything? Lucas turned to look at her directly. What do you mean? I mean, you've been through something intense today. Sometimes people need space to process things. I don't want to assume. He kissed her, cutting off her worried rambling. When he pulled back, he kept his hands on her face, making sure she could see the truth in his eyes. This doesn't change how I feel about you. If anything, having you here today, seeing how you supported both of us through that, it made me more certain than ever that I want you in my life, in our lives. He took a breath. I love you, Claire. I love you in a way that feels permanent and real and terrifying, and I don't want space to process. I want you right here, exactly where you are. Claire's eyes filled with tears. I love you too. So much it scares me sometimes. Good scared or bad scared? Good scared. The kind that means it matters. They sat together on the porch until the sun began to set, watching the light paint the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. From inside the house, they could hear the quiet sounds of Ethan playing, and Lucas felt something settle in his chest, a sense that the hardest part was behind them, that they'd weathered the storm and come out intact. Over the following weeks, life returned to its comfortable rhythm. Ethan didn't ask about Jennifer again, though Lucas made sure to check in regularly, giving him space to talk about it if he wanted to. But his son seemed genuinely at peace with the meeting, treating it as a closed chapter rather than an ongoing story. Jennifer sent Lucas a single email 2 weeks after the meeting, thanking him for allowing it and confirming that she wouldn't push for more unless Ethan specifically asked. She'd respected his boundaries, and Lucas found he could let go of some of the anger he'd been carrying. She would always be the woman who'd left, but she was also someone who'd been broken and was trying to make amends in the only way she could. That was enough. Claire became even more integrated into their daily lives. She started keeping a toothbrush in the bathroom, then clothes in the closet, then groceries in the kitchen. It happened gradually and naturally, her presence becoming as essential as air. Ethan started calling her Claire most of the time, but occasionally slipped into Mom Claire when he was tired or excited. And each time it happened, Lucas watched Claire's face light up with quiet joy. In early December, Lucas finished a major commission, a dining table and chairs set made from reclaimed barnwood that had taken him 3 months to complete. The client was thrilled, and the payment was enough to give Lucas some financial breathing room he hadn't had in years. That evening, after delivering the furniture and depositing the check, he stopped at a small jewelry store in town. He'd been thinking about this for weeks, planning it in the quiet moments when he was alone in his workshop. The jeweler, a woman in her 60s who'd known Lucas since he was a kid, smiled when he explained what he was looking for. About time, she said warmly. I've seen you two around town. She's good for you. She is, Lucas agreed. She's good for both of us. He left the store with a small velvet box in his pocket and a plan forming in his mind. It had to be right. Not grand or elaborate, but real and meaningful. Something that honored who they were and what they'd built together. The opportunity came 2 weeks later on a quiet Saturday evening. Claire had made dinner, her famous pasta that Ethan loved, and they'd eaten together with the easy conversation of people who'd shared countless meals. Afterward, Ethan was building an elaborate Lego spaceship on the living room floor while Lucas and Claire cleaned up the kitchen. Hey, Ethan, Lucas called from the kitchen. Can you come here for a minute? His son appeared in the doorway, Lego pieces still in his hands. What's up? Lucas exchanged a glance with Claire, who looked confused. He took a breath, feeling his heart hammer against his ribs. I need to ask you something important, buddy, and I need you to be completely honest with me, okay? Ethan's expression turned serious. Okay. How would you feel if Claire became part of our family permanently? Like, officially part of it? Ethan looked between them, processing. Then his face broke into a huge grin. You mean like married? Yeah, like married. That would be awesome. Ethan turned to Claire. Are you going to live here all the time? Claire laughed, her eyes bright with tears. I think that's what your dad is asking me, but he hasn't actually asked yet. Lucas turned to her, suddenly nervous in a way he hadn't been for anything in years. Claire Whitmore, I need to tell you something. I'm listening. When I met you, I was convinced I was broken. I thought my life was too complicated, too messy, too full of obligations for anyone to willingly choose it. But you didn't just choose it, you embraced it. You saw my life with all its complications, and you said it was worth it. He pulled the small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a simple ring, a thin band of wood inlaid with silver that he'd crafted himself. This isn't fancy or expensive. I made it in my workshop because I wanted you to have something I created with my own hands, something that represents what we've built together. Simple, strong, real. Claire's hands were pressed to her mouth, tears streaming down her face. You've become essential to us. To me. You make my quiet life feel complete instead of small. You make me want to be better, to risk more, to believe that good things can last. He got down on one knee, right there in his kitchen, with the dinner dishes still on the counter and his son watching with barely contained excitement. Will you marry me? Will you choose this messy, complicated, beautiful life with us? Claire was crying openly now, nodding before she could even get the words out. Yes. Yes, of course, yes. Lucas slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, the way he'd hoped it would. And then she was pulling him up, kissing him while Ethan cheered and danced around them. Can I call you Mom now? Ethan asked when they finally broke apart. Like, not Mom Claire. Just Mom? Claire crouched down to his level, taking his hands in hers. Only if you want to. And only when you're ready. There's no rush. I'm ready. You do all the mom things anyway. You make dinner and help with homework and come to my school stuff. You're already my mom. We just didn't have the official word for it yet. Lucas watched Claire fold his son into her arms, both of them crying happy tears, and felt his own eyes sting. This was his family, not born from traditional circumstances, not following the expected path, but real and chosen and perfect in its imperfection. That night, after Ethan was asleep, Lucas and Claire sat on the porch under a sky full of stars. Claire kept looking at her ring, touching it like she needed to confirm it was real. It's beautiful, she said for the 10th time. I can't believe you made it. I wanted it to be from me, not from a store or some stranger, from my hands to yours. She leaned against him, and he wrapped his arm around her shoulders. When should we do this? The wedding, I mean. Whenever you want. Tomorrow, next year. I don't care. I just want you here. I was thinking spring, something small and simple. Maybe right here, in the backyard. Just family and close friends. That sounds perfect. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds, owls calling, wind in the pines, the distant sound of the creek that ran through their property. Lucas? Claire said softly. Yeah? Thank you for taking a chance on me, for letting me into this incredible life you've built. Thank you for seeing it as incredible instead of complicated. It's both. That's what makes it worth it. The wedding happened in late April, when the wildflowers were blooming and the weather had finally shifted from winter to spring. They kept it small, 30 people in their backyard. Simple wooden chairs Lucas had built himself, wildflowers in mason jars. Sarah stood as Claire's maid of honor, and Ethan was Lucas's best man, a role he took with utmost seriousness. Marcus performed the ceremony, having gotten ordained online specifically for this purpose. The vows were simple and honest. Lucas promised to choose Claire every day, to support her dreams, to make her coffee the way she liked it and listen when she needed to talk. Claire promised to love Ethan as her own, to be patient with Lucas when his fears got loud, to build a life that honored what they'd each brought to the relationship. When Marcus pronounced them married, Ethan cheered louder than anyone. The reception was casual, barbecue and homemade sides, a playlist of their favorite songs, dancing on the grass as the sun set. Ethan fell asleep on a blanket under the stars, and Lucas and Claire danced slowly in the fading light, their family and friends around them, everything feeling exactly right. Claire moved in officially the week after the wedding, though most of her things were already there. She'd given up her apartment in town, and her company had made her remote position permanent, which meant she could work from the cabin and have the flexibility to be there for Ethan when he got home from school. Life settled into new patterns. Claire turned the guest room into a home office, filling it with plants and the organized chaos of her work. She and Ethan developed their own traditions: Thursday night baking, where they made increasingly elaborate desserts, and Saturday morning farmers market trips, where they picked out ingredients for the week. Lucas expanded his workshop, taking on more ambitious projects now that he had someone to share the load of daily life with. He taught a woodworking class at the community center on Tuesday evenings, something he'd always wanted to do but never had the bandwidth for when he was managing everything alone. They became a family in all the ways that mattered, not because biology or law said they should be, but because they chose each other every single day. On Ethan's 8th birthday, they had a party in the backyard with his friends from school. Lucas grilled burgers while Claire managed the chaos of 8-year-olds hopped up on sugar and excitement. As the afternoon wound down and parents came to collect their children, Ethan pulled Claire aside. "Can we talk?" he asked, suddenly serious. "Of course, sweetie. What's up?" He led her to his room, closing the door behind them. Lucas watched from the kitchen, curious but not interfering. A few minutes later, they emerged. Ethan was smiling, and Claire's eyes were suspiciously bright. "Everything okay?" Lucas asked. "Everything's perfect," Claire said. "Ethan just asked me if I wanted to officially adopt him. Make it legal on paper the way it already is in our hearts." Lucas felt his breath catch. He looked at his son, this incredible kid who had more wisdom and courage than most adults. "Are you sure, buddy? That's a really big decision." "I'm sure. Claire's my mom. I want it to be official." They started the adoption process the following week. It was surprisingly straightforward. Jennifer had already signed away her parental rights, and there were no legal obstacles. By the end of summer, it was done. Claire was officially Ethan's mother in every way that mattered. That evening, they celebrated quietly at home with Ethan's favorite meal and a cake Claire had made. As they sat around the table, Lucas, Claire, and Ethan, Lucas felt overwhelmed by gratitude for the path that had led them here. He thought about the night he'd almost skipped that first blind date, about how close he'd come to missing all of this because he'd been afraid, about how his friends had pushed him to show up anyway, how Claire had seen past his defenses, how Ethan had welcomed her with the open heart of childhood. "What are you thinking about?" Claire asked, reading his expression. "About how I almost didn't show up that night at the cafe, about how different my life would be if I'd stayed home." She reached across the table and took his hand. "But you did show up. That's what matters." "I did, because Marcus wouldn't let me bail." "Remind me to send him a thank you card," Claire said with a smile. "Can we watch a movie now?" Ethan asked, already pushing back from the table. "Sure, buddy. You pick." As Ethan raced to the living room to make his selection, Lucas pulled Claire close, kissing her with the comfortable familiarity of someone who knew they had a lifetime of this ahead of them. "I love you, Mutt," he said. "I love you too. Both of you. My whole family." They joined Ethan on the couch, the three of them curled together under a blanket as some animated movie played on the screen. Outside, the summer evening was soft and warm, fireflies beginning to dance in the yard. Inside, the cabin that Lucas had been slowly renovating for years finally felt complete, not because the work was done, but because it was filled with the people who made it a home. Lucas thought about the journey that had brought them here, the fear and heartbreak, the courage and hope, the daily choice to keep showing up even when it was hard. He thought about Jennifer and the meeting that had brought closure. He thought about Claire's patience and Ethan's resilience and his own slow learning to trust that good things could last. And he realized that his life wasn't small or broken after all. It was exactly what he'd been building toward all along. A family created not by accident or obligation, but by choice. By people who saw each other clearly and loved what they saw. By quiet moments and shared meals and everyday acts of care that added up to something extraordinary. Ethan fell asleep halfway through the movie, his head on Claire's shoulder. She stroked his hair absently, her other hand linked with Lucas's. And Lucas looked at them, his wife, his son, his family, and felt more complete than he ever had in his life. The quiet life he'd built didn't disappear when Claire entered it. Instead, it expanded to hold more joy, more love, more possibility than he'd ever imagined. And as he sat there in his cabin with his family, Lucas finally understood what he'd been searching for all along. Not someone to complete him, he'd already been whole, but someone to share the journey with. Someone who chose his messy, complicated, beautiful life and made it even better by being part of it. Someone who, on a night when he almost didn't show up, had been waiting by the window of a lakeside cafe. And that had made all the difference.